I'm the elected official who can't manage their budget.
The sheriff decided to go with one fund, so with the option of taking the general fund funded amount from 2023 and transferring that into public safety sales tax for maximum flexibility in the utilization of that money. And also they have determined internally with the help of budget staff that they will keep records for transparency and for future reference on how the funding is used.
So this will be the first time that we intermingle funds, and I don't recommend it.
The $26 million that I have for the general fund right now is not enough to keep the sheriff's office running. Last year, we put in a budget request of $300,000 for overtime because I'm allotted about, I think I'm roughly speaking, about $26,000 in overtime per month. We're routinely spending about $100,000 to keep this operation running. That's just to keep 7 deputies on the road 24 hours a day and pay them the overtime that is required by federal law to keep the operation running. The concern that I have is that regardless of how we go about this, is that I still need general fund dollars to help offset this. So we put in a general fund request last year for $300,000 in budget authority on overtime. That was approved through the public safety tax. So that's how we're staying afloat this year. We are overspent in the general fund. We trained our deputies the year before. We had to slash all the training. I'm not doing that again. I can't send tired and untrained deputies out into the field where it's a disaster waiting to happen. So we're kind of already there, I guess, is my point, is that we're spending public safety tax dollars on general fund operations.
And it's going to be very, very difficult for the public to understand what is being spent where. And just mingling these funds gives the perception of supplanting. So I think that's an important consideration because that was a promise to the voters. It was in the resolution that we would not supplant, and there's really going to be a lot of difficulty showing that. I think from a public perception standpoint and transparency, which we discussed a lot, I mean, we have trust issues with the voters in the county, and I don't think this is going to help that at all.
Go for it, Summer.
Thank you. Last week, we met with the sheriff, Heidi, the auditor, and county manager and budget staff to present the options available to the sheriff for the maintenance of effort. The sheriff decided to go with one fund, so with the option of taking the general fund funded amount from 2023 and transferring that into public safety sales tax for maximum flexibility in the utilization of that money. And also they have determined internally with the help of budget staff that they will keep records for transparency and for future reference on how the funding is used, so that in the spirit of the public safety sales tax passage that we are maintaining the appropriate cost separation internally. And I believe that captures all of it. If you have any questions.
Does that represent the sheriff's position?
Yeah, he's walking in the door right now.
Now you get to do it again, Summer.
Perfect. Good morning.
I'm early.
Thank you for joining us. So I was just sharing with the group here that last week we met with yourself and Heidi and the auditor's team, the budget team, the county manager, to discuss the options as presented to you, and that you chose to go with the one funding option to transfer the general fund amount at 2023 levels into public safety sales tax for maximum flexibility, and that internally that budget staff will help your finance team set up the appropriate coding so that you can report to the public as needed for full transparency of the usage of those funds. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically with either funding model, it didn't really matter. The point still remains that the public safety tax is not enough money to support existing staff. So regardless of how we slice and dice this, as long as the expectation is there that the general fund requests are not going to end in the future when, you know, general fund expenditures continue to go up, and we talked about like that 2% escalator and things like that, then to us, we're kind of at the point where it doesn't really matter how the funds are split up. We'll continue to track our new staff separately when it comes to coding. That way we can report back to the public to say, hey, listen, you guys approved a tax in 2023, here's what it bought you. It bought you 27 deputies. It bought you a building, so you no longer have lease space, those kinds of things. But those are things we can track internally, so.
And this meets all the legal requirements of the state auditor doing a review and all that.
I believe it does.
Well, when you say you believe it does,
Questions have been asked from the state auditor, and their response has been that we need to work with our attorneys, which we've done.
and so do we have an opinion that matches what the state auditor is asking? I'm just trying to stay ahead of a finding later on that we did something wrong. That's.
We
my
are
concern.
too, Commissioner.
So do we have that,
We have the
Opinion.
responses from the state auditor.
but we don't have anything in writing from our legal counsel?
We have the opinion that internally, as long as we are using the funds appropriately, that there's nothing wrong with transferring the,
My concern is, being as there's a question, why not get it definite in writing? And so 2 or 3 years from now, we don't have to say, well, they said it's probably okay. I don't know, I'm kind of looking at our auditor over here to see if we get anything in writing from anybody to make sure that we're making, as a board, a good, sound legal decision. I'm not questioning it. I think it's great. I want to go along with it, but I don't want the county to be faced with a finding at a later date because we didn't cover something. So I'm probably talking about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, but
Well, we've gone through it with prosecuting attorney,
and they don't want to give
our
a,
ability to direct a legal opinion, a written legal opinion, I think is,
I'd like to have it be on the record that the Thurston County prosecuting attorney is refusing to give us a written opinion.
So let's take a beat, and I think that we can draft up the process as Summer has related this morning, and then take an opportunity to have that reviewed again by the legal counsel, which has already reviewed the process that Summer's stating, and see what we can do about confirmation that you're requesting. But I think that we have a good path forward and appreciate the collaboration with the sheriff. Does that sound good, Commissioner?
That sounds good to me. I see
Sounds
the
good.
chair shaking his head.
no,
It's
that sounds
okay,
good.
right?
I'm also just, if we had an auditor's representative sitting in that
We
chair.
do. We do.
There's over there, Brandon.
Brandon is here.
Can we bring you up, Brandon? Sure. This has been too difficult of a question to leave it stone unturned.
Yeah, you got it.
Have you heard the whole discussion, or did you walk in? partway
Yeah,
through?
I heard the whole discussion and Brandon Weber, internal auditor, I work out of the auditor's office.
So what's your comfort level with the proposal that we've
Well,
come to?
as far as the SAO end, they're really hesitant to weigh in on really complex legal issues. This, in some ways, maybe is complex, in some ways is simple, depending on how much you squint at it. So we've reviewed it with them. They say, document your methodology, your rationale, and we've done that really well. I think we vetted the issue across the county. One of the challenges is that we look at the same piece of paper and the same words, and people bring sort of their own background to it, and sometimes, have different conclusions to it. But ultimately, I don't think that there's going to be any concern with the maintenance of effort methodology. A lot of federal grants are written that way, and that as long as you are not reducing your appropriation in response to the new funding, that generally we're okay. So I don't have any major concerns about how we've approached it. Again, I think at the end of the day, and what the sheriff's really indicated is demonstrating to the public what we're doing with these dollars, and as our costs go up, to make sure that we're continuing to, meet our commitment to the voters.
This methodology adds quite a bit of transparency, so. We have someone.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Edwards?
No, sounds like we're headed in the right direction. That's all I'm concerned about.
Thanks, Steve. Oh,
I saw Diana walk in. If you wanted to give comments, I just wanted to give you an opportunity, or were
Oh,
you
here,
just
here
listening?
comes the auditor too.
Might have some more comments. Would that be okay, Chair?
Come on up, man.
Sorry, I was running down the stairs when you started. Give me a 30-second briefing.
Yeah, overview that there was a,
we'll just have Summer do it for the third time.
okay.
All right, Summer?
Yes. So last week we met with yourself, the auditor, auditor team, budget staff, the county manager, and the sheriff's team to review the maintenance of effort options. And the sheriff decided that he would like to choose the option of having the general fund amount from 2023, the funded amount transferred into public safety sales tax. And that internally, budget staff would work with Heidi and the finance staff in the sheriff's office to set up the coding appropriately so that we can maintain the usage of those funds moving forward. So that if the sheriff is reporting out what is spent from the original public safety sales tax funding and the general fund funding, that all of that information is maintained and separated appropriately in our internal records.
Okay. So you want the auditor's kind of overview and opinion. Yeah, that was a nice half-hour meeting. It seems like we never have enough time to really go into the detail, and it was pretty clear by Leonard, the county manager, that it was up to the sheriff. End of story. It was up to the sheriff. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed because per statute, the auditor is the ex officio state auditor for the county. And while I think it is allowable, I think there are two things that we really need to consider. And one is, number one, it's going to be very difficult to sort these out from a financial report standpoint. I mean, we still have to report them separately. I also want to make note that every single other sales tax that we have is in a separate fund. So this will be the first time that we intermingle funds, and I don't recommend it. Heidi is fantastic, and I think she will be able to do a great job. She's been with the county a long time. Heidi's also nearing retirement age, and I am a little concerned that what would happen if she leaves the county, which everybody is going to leave the county at some point in time and retire. I think from a public perception standpoint and transparency, which we discussed a lot, I mean, we have trust issues with the voters in the county, and I don't think this is going to help that at all. Well, we may be able to put financial staff to work to provide a report to sort that out. That's going to be a lot of extra effort for financial folks, not just in the sheriff's office, but in financial services as well. And it's going to be very, very difficult for the public to understand what is being spent where. And just mingling these funds gives the perception of supplanting. So I think that's an important consideration because that was a promise to the voters. It was in the resolution that we would not supplant, and there's really going to be a lot of difficulty showing that. And I want to turn it over to Diana just for a little more detailed, high-level overview into the details.
Well, it will be very quick. I appreciate the work that the commissioner's staff did, and I actually agree with their quadrants. I just want to make sure that the commissioners who make these decisions and the elected officials that have to report to constituents understand that we prefer clean, transparent accounting. And the number one thing of two accounts is it's really easy to see. It's really easy to demonstrate what we did with the new money if the new money is separate. While we understand that the operational flexibility that the sheriff wants and I do understand that, not having to come to the board and keeping those funds in a separate place is going to potentially cause the disadvantage of a perception of supplanting, which means people are going to ask the question and we're going to need to answer the question. So what we saw in emails last week was Heidi, which I completely trust, has said she is going to separate these, and it's 5 pages back and front of what's coming from the general fund into this public safety sales tax. And when we get those questions, which we know are coming, we're going to need to take these separate accounts and split those apart. So I will say we want to make sure that whatever the board decides, we're going to do the best we can. But at least the opinion of the auditor's office is keeping it clean and separate is going to keep us, which takes more work and attention to detail. I agree with that also. But attention to detail is what's going to need to be needed for the transparency and clean expenditure tracking. And that is the auditor's recommendation.
And we will need to split them out for our financial reporting to the state auditor anyway. So, you know, that's going to be a lot of labor from my staff. So we're pretty strapped as it is, but.
I will say that this has been difficult. When you say we've talked a long time, I felt like the 15 minutes wasn't enough discussion, that everyone's trying their best to get this information communicated. But it was made very clear that it was the sheriff's decision. And I hope that we're able to answer the questions from the financial reporting standpoint and from a public records standpoint, and we'll be able to have the trust of the voters that when we go before them, that we will be able to show that this is good use of funds.
Commissioner Klaus.
So I appreciate you, Auditor Hall, and your staff for coming down here during this conversation. And I'm hearing from the sheriff, and let me know if I'm mishearing or misunderstanding that you say kind of the funds, it's all the same really, whether we combine them or not. And I'm wondering how significant is the operational flexibility to you, because those are not words I've heard out of your mouth. So I want to know directly from you, like if it's your decision is what we're hearing from the county manager, and we have an auditor's opinion saying, you know, this could be messy, it could create more work. Every other sales tax has its own fund. Does that affect how you feel about it at all, or do you feel strongly about combining them?
Honestly, at this point, like, I just feel like we got to the point where we're just spinning our wheels, because ultimately, I am not the legislative authority in this county. That's the commissioners. That's the commissioners and the budget team to figure out how to spend money, where the accounts go, all those types of things. The auditor's job is to make sure that it's all done correctly, obviously. My big thing is that the $26 million that I have for the general fund right now is not enough to keep the sheriff's office running. Last year, we put in a budget request of $300,000 for overtime, because I'm allotted about, I think I'm roughly speaking, about $26,000 in overtime per month. We're routinely spending about $100,000 to keep this operation running. That's just to keep 7 deputies on the road 24 hours a day, and pay them the overtime that is required by federal law to keep the operation running. The concern that I have is that once regardless of how we go about this, is that I still need general fund dollars to help offset this. So we put in a general fund request last year for $300,000 in budget authority on overtime. That was approved through the public safety tax. So that's how we're staying afloat this year. We are overspent in the general fund. We trained our deputies the year before. We had to slash all the training. I'm not doing that again. I can't send tired and untrained deputies out into the field where it's a disaster waiting to happen. So we're kind of already there, I guess, is my point, is that we're spending public safety tax dollars on general fund operations, because until September, October of this year, we didn't have a public safety tax deputy working the road. So the overtime that we're paying to keep our normal operations running is being paid out of the public safety tax, which is supposed to be for new staff, new infrastructure, those kinds of things. So I guess my point is that we're already here. the conversation's already being had about commingling funds and using joint efforts to make the operation work. Because otherwise, I would be $300,000 in the hole right now, and I would be asking for you guys to bail me out with general fund dollars from somewhere. And I guess from my position, I'm just stuck in a really challenging spot of, I would rather personally have some sort of audit finding at the county level than owe $300,000 out of my paycheck personally, because I'm the elected official who can't manage their budget. But the problem is I don't physically have the dollars to keep it running. The only alternative is to lower staffing levels to a point where we lower overtime and don't respond to certain calls. I think we're all kind of stuck in a spot right now of like, we've already crossed this bridge, and how are we gonna move forward with it?
Commissioner Fournier?
So I see this on the agenda just as a discussion point with no, there's no specific decision being made right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So thank you.
Commissioner Mejia?
Thank you. Just from what I'm hearing over here, I believe that, I guess I would direct for the county manager and the auditor's team as well as the sheriff's team, kind of sit back down, right? And try to work out through the details. I'm not sure, if the sheriff wants to proceed this way, maybe then it's just the auditors and our budget team, working out through these details. So I guess just at this time, that's kind of where I'm leaning, just to give that direction to the county manager, for more discussions to happen.
I guess I just want to clarify with my seatmate. So we're recognizing the sheriff has needs to run his operation. And it sounds like we're covering it right now. I don't know if it's being covered correctly. I just want to do it right. And I think that I think I've seen a statute, I can't quote it, that does say something about the county auditor is the ex officio state auditor. And to me, that means something. It's in there for a reason. And I want the auditor in the middle of this. I want to accept the auditor's position, but I want to take care of the sheriff's needs. So I guess I kind of agree with my seatmate that I don't see that the sheriff needs to be there in the middle of this. You don't need to referee it, I don't think. But I think we need to figure something out, and it bugs me that we can't get recommendations that make sense and follow the law. I'm trying to figure out the why here. And I don't understand the legal not being willing to jump in, but okay, that's,
So
go
we have
ahead, Mary, I'm sorry.
We have a couple of items on the table. Oh, sorry, was there a question? Sorry.
Mary's
Yeah,
got some.
I was just
That's
gonna, thank you. I agree that we should probably have more discussion about this. The meetings need to be more than 30 minutes. Whoever his assistant is, that just does not give us enough time. I mean, we need a couple hours to really hash through the details and come to, something that works for everybody. And, I don't have the idea in my head right now, but, if we can we get creative and stay within the law and put some other type of something out there where the general fund would go into a suspense fund? I don't know. I'd need to talk with my financial staff, but I don't know. I don't believe that there are just two ways to do this. And I think, let's kind of think in a circle, and are there other options that would accomplish both things?
Commissioner Fournier? And then I'll go to Diana, and then I have a comment. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking that there is no ideal situation, and I'm agreeing with Commissioner Mejia that it sounds like you need the work group needs to get back together and find some type of compromise that that can be presented to us, and then the recommendation should be coming to us. I guess without a tremendous amount of disagreement. It seems, I don't. I'm hearing different words that, well, it's, the concept is not ideal. The concept is, it will work, but we don't like it, so I'm not going to hold out for something that's perfect and ideal, but we all have to come to an agreement. We all have to make compromises.
Diana?
So I do think there are some options we can talk through, and I could give an example if I don't know because it hasn't been fully baked. But for instance, our election stabilization fund, we do the opposite. We have a restricted fund and we transfer money from that restricted fund to the general fund when the general fund needs more money.
Okay.
And so that.
Can I jump back? If this isn't fully baked, can we take it back offline and bake it more before it comes back up?
Talk through those
Please?
types of options. That you need funds. I agree that we want you to be able to have the most flexibility with the funds, and we want it to be as clean as possible. And I don't feel that 15 or 30 minutes was enough discussion that we needed. And at least what you have presented, we agree these two quadrants are what are the auditor's recommendation. So we'll continue to talk through that.
Okay, so
So I would just like to clarify that county manager and the budget team have made it abundantly clear that it doesn't matter to us. That we are not pushing one position or the other. We will make whichever work.
okay, I guess I agree with pretty much what I've heard from my seatmates. I'm nervous. I would also like to see a compromise that everyone is comfortable with. Because what I'm hearing is, if we don't get closer to that, then if this decision is going to be on our lap, I was hoping not to have to go into the deepest of deep weeds, but you guys are pulling me there, and I will go there. If we can't get closer to agreement, then I will dive in, and I will need to be at all these meetings, and I will need to hear from every party exactly what is the, Commissioner Klaus's question was right on point, like exactly my question, like how much does this matter to you? How much risk are we taking? How much work is this going to be on budget? I don't know. I was hoping our experts could figure this out for us, but if you put this on my back, then I'm going to have to figure it out, and I'm going to have to know that I'm right when the vote that I take. And I have no idea right now because I don't do the jobs that you all do. So I would agree with Commissioner Mejia. Let's take one more shot at trying to figure this out. Otherwise, and I'm getting nervous because I know the time is not today's time. I mean, the timeline on this having this decision be decided is ticking. And I may have a lot of education of myself to do between now and then.
Input is received. Thank you.
I saw a lot of hands. Who wants to go first? Sheriff Sanders.
Well, this was kind of thrown on my lap. I didn't realize when I walked into the meeting that it was going to be, hey, this is your choice. Make a decision on it, right? Like, because I'm not an auditor and I'm not a budget person. But where I get cold feet with all of this, I think in a perfect world, I would prefer two funds. Like, I agree with the auditor. That makes it really clean and easy. Where I get cold feet is that the voters approved this tax for all the new stuff, but we're already paying for old stuff with the new stuff. So because of that, we're already in this like 30-day time. We're crunching down now of like, are we already supplanting? Because that $300,000 that's been authorized in public safety tax money, I'm spending that. That's the overtime that it costs to run the agency this year and actually train our staff and meet the demands. So if that goes away, I need 300,000 general fund dollars or I'm overspent. And so that's where I'm in a pickle of like, we made this direction, we moved down this direction, I made operational decisions based on that funding, but now we're sitting in a position of, if those are two separate funds and I'm not touching any of that for old stuff, I've got a big bill for old stuff. And that bill going forward isn't gonna go away. That's my point. The overtime is never gonna get cheaper than it was this year. The wages are never gonna be lower than they were this year. And the training that the state is sending down that's mandated and unfunded is not getting any less. We have more unfunded training mandates. So I guess my whole thing is, ideally, yeah, let's separate the accounts, but the general fund requests are gonna start flying in. to make sure that I'm whole on the general fund side to support that initial batch of employees. And then on the public safety side, well, we have excess money over here now for the other stuff. But that's my big thing is like, I know that I'm personally liable for every dollar overspent in my budget. And Heidi does a really good job of covering me and making sure that I am underspent and we revert something back every year. But I'm really nervous about the fact that we've already started down this path and I've made these decisions throughout the year based on the direction that I received.
So do we have concurrence to have a continued discussion with the team? I see that Commissioner Klaus.
I give a thumbs up to that, and I also had a question about kind of what the sheriff is talking about now. That's what I highlighted and wrote down is, does everyone understand, like, the process that's currently happening? And it sounds like, no, I know I don't understand. And I want to just make sure in the interim, while we're still continuing these conversations, that we're not doing something wrong or, you know, just having a plan in place for now. I mean, are we just going to continue doing it the way we're doing it and then hope for the best, or should we, I don't know, should we address that today, or how should we do that? Because it sounds like we might run into a problem down the road, and I'm not hearing an answer on how that's going to be reconciled.
I think the direction that the board has provided to reconvene the parties to sit down and kind of work through those, and we can actually do some brainstorming as well of sort of the myriad of questions that need to be answered so that we can bring back a full recommendation to the board for consideration. And I'm hearing that that's sooner as opposed to later.
Do you have something? Auditor?
I just want to say, I mean, we're just coming out of a presidential election that was a huge effort. So we do have more time to dedicate to this. And I just want to make a comment about audit findings. We've had several over the last few years, and eventually our bond rating is going to go down. And I think,
Just got one and it stayed the same.
well,
So I mean,
I
that's
know,
good.
but eventually.
We
it's
lucked
going to-
out
keep
this,
that.
we lucked out this
Yes.
time.
Yes, we did. But
Very aware of our
Yeah.
audit finding.
And I will
I'm
say
not sure
that
the
I
public
think
is.
talking through these things is what we need to do next, because I can see, for instance, the internal auditor is independent and makes recommendations when he believes that we can work through this process, but he is independent and not doing the tracking work, which is work and attention to detail, that is true. And I think that, and this may be incorrect assumption, but for instance, overtime, the expectation is, or I would think a reasonable person would think, you have more overtime when you have less deputies. When you have more deputies, are they working less overtime? And so do we have some things that we can use if it is challenged? And so talking through those types of things, to make sure that we're prepared for this year and every year thereafter, that it stays clean and trackable, and that we are not supplanting, which is what we told the voters. And what you had as a 2023 budget, which is your baseline, that we want to make sure that we don't have an inadvertent supplanting. Are we expecting that the sheriff's budget is going to go down less than that 2023 number in something that we cannot support? And so those are the types of conversations that we need more than the 15 to 30 minutes to talk through.
Heard. Commissioner Fournier?
Yeah, when a recommendation does come back, I get like, I don't know, suspicious is not the word, but when I hear the words, the perception and assumption, and like, I prefer like objective, words that like make me think it's an objective analysis and not a subjective analysis. So like when a recommendation comes forth, like the perceptions of, or assumptions of things being done in a way that is not in line with other subjective thoughts, to me aren't as powerful as just, can you do it? Is it legal? Can it be done? You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. So I think we're wrapping up this item. Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I want to reassure the sheriff that I don't think we're interested in putting him in a pickle. And we, as the county legislative body, we're faced with ongoing litigation. We we might have to pay out. And if we have to do that, or if we have to pay back $300,000, we could do that. We've got a rainy day fund. We could do it if we had to do it. I certainly don't want the sheriff on the hook. He's trying to play ball with the community and make the community safer. And I think it behooves us to assure him that we're going to cover this. Just because we didn't get it figured out quite properly, that's not his fault. So I'd just like to make sure that we follow the auditor's advice. That's my initial goal, but I want to hear the rest of this. And we've got other things pending, and we've got a rainy day fund we could draw from if we had to as a last resort. So
Just to cap this off, we have not billed any of those overtime hours to the public safety tax, to my knowledge yet. So Chief Thompson has been holding off for that reason of like, she's gonna spend the general fund dollars because that's what makes sense, and then we'll wait. But the projected variance for the general fund is negative. So the plan was to pay the bill off with our budget authority. So that's how we move forward with that. But I'm happy to meet and continue to work on this.
more to come, sounds like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
10:30, we'll take 10 minutes, and then we will convene with item 7.